Delaney Voss was supposed to be celebrating the happiest night of her life. Cairo Wendell had just slipped a diamond ring on her finger, and their wedding at the exclusive Lakeshore estate had captivated everyone, until the bride vanished without a trace and the groom was found drugged, bound, and locked in the trunk of his own car. What began as a fairy tale turned into a chilling mystery of deception, betrayal, and calculated murder. As detectives unraveled the truth, they realized Delaney wasn't just missing. She was orchestrating something far more sinister. The wedding of Delaney Voss and Cairo Wendell was the kind of high society event that made headlines before it even happened. The ceremony took place at the secluded yet opulent Lakeshore estate, a sprawling mansion hidden behind gated woods and overlooking a glittering blue lake. It was the kind of venue that screamed wealth, class, and exclusivity. Only 100 guests were invited, and every one of them had a reason to feel special for being included. Cairo, the heir to a chain of luxury properties across the country, had always lived in the spotlight. Delaney, on the other hand, was a quiet mystery, her past shrouded in whispers and vague stories about moving frequently and having no close family. Her calm demeanor and striking looks had drawn people in, but she always kept them just far enough away. The ceremony was flawless. Delaney wore a lace gown that shimmered in the sun, and Cairo looked every bit the golden boy in a custom-tailored tuxedo. Their vows were brief but emotional, and the guests erupted into applause as they kissed beneath an arch of white orchids. Afterward, the reception moved to a ballroom lined with crystal chandeliers and waiters carrying trays of imported champagne. Everything was carefully planned and tastefully executed, until the final toast ended and the newlyweds slipped away to their suite. That was the last time anyone saw them together. It started as a mild curiosity. After 20 minutes, people assumed the couple was simply enjoying their wedding night. An hour later, a few friends knocked on the bridal suite door to deliver a late night dessert platter and found no answer. The staff was told not to disturb them. By morning, Cairo's mother had grown concerned. The breakfast tray left outside the suite remained untouched. The estate manager used the master key to unlock the door, expecting to find the couple asleep. Instead, the suite was pristine. The bed was untouched, the fireplace unlit. Delaney's bouquet lay on the vanity beside her cell phone. Her shoes were under the chair, and her gown hung neatly from the door. There were no signs of struggle, but also no signs of either of them. The guests were discreetly questioned by the estate staff, and when no answers came, the Wendell family called the police. Detective Lorna Keene arrived shortly after. She had worked dozens of missing person cases in the past, but something about this one felt off from the start. A bride disappearing on the wedding night was unusual. A groom vanishing too was unheard of. Security footage became the next priority. Dozens of cameras dotted the property. However, the tech team quickly realized that several feeds were corrupted. Specifically, those facing the side entrance of the bridal suite had gone black for a period of 20 minutes, just around the time the couple had last been seen. No weather issues. No power outage. Someone had manually disabled the system. By early afternoon, the staff began checking the vehicles in the estate's private parking lot. Most had been accounted for, but one caught their attention. A black luxury sedan, registered to Cairo Wendell, remained parked near the east exit. The valet staff claimed it hadn't moved since the night before. A young valet named Finn Ramley noticed something odd. There was condensation on the trunk, despite the warm temperature. The back bumper had scuff marks, and the keyhole looked tampered with. The trunk was pried open under Detective Keene's orders. What they found shocked everyone. Cairo Wendell was curled in the fetal position, bound at the wrists with silk ribbon, and unconscious. He was breathing, but his pulse was faint. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, where he was stabilized. Toxicology reports would later confirm he had been drugged with a high-dose sedative, likely slipped into his drink. But the bigger question remained, where was Delaney? The estate grounds were searched thoroughly. Drones flew overhead. The lake was scanned. Bloodhounds sniffed every trail. There was no trace of the bride. Her phone, her purse, even her change of clothes were still inside the suit. There were no footprints leading away from the property. It was as if she had vanished into the air. And now, with the groom found locked in his own trunk, the fairy tale wedding had turned into something far more disturbing. Cairo Wendell awoke in a hospital bed, disoriented, with the taste of metal in his mouth and confusion clouding his memory. He struggled to recall what had happened after the wedding toast, but his mind offered nothing but flashes, lights, music, a sudden dizziness, then blackness. The doctors informed Detective Lorna Keene that his system had been compromised by a fast-acting sedative, likely introduced less than an hour before he lost consciousness. The dosage was high enough to knock him out for nearly 12 hours, but not enough to cause permanent damage. His wrists showed ligature marks from silk binding, and there was a faint bruise on the side of his neck, possibly from a sharp prick, which hinted at an injection. While Cairo recovered under medical watch, the investigation continued to focus on Delaney's disappearance. The lakeshore estate was placed under strict lockdown, and all guests were asked to remain available for questioning. Some were cooperative, others frustrated, but no one could explain how a bride could vanish so completely from a property so heavily monitored and secured. Detective Keene turned her attention to the security footage. The corrupted files from the bridal suite corridor were being examined by digital forensics, but initial analysis showed manual tampering. Someone had overridden the feed remotely, a task that required either insider access or professional skills. Strangely, other parts of the estate remained untouched on the security system, including the front entrance, kitchen areas, and garden. Then a new clue emerged from an unexpected source: the wedding photographer Nor Ellison. She had taken hundreds of shots during the day, posed portraits, candid moments behind the scenes glimpses. While reviewing her camera's raw files for editing, she noticed something strange in one of the images captured near the end of the night. It showed Delaney walking away from the bridal suite toward the side gate, but she was no longer in her wedding gown. Instead, she wore a cream-colored dress with a short hem, sunglasses, and flat shoes. Her face was partially turned away, and she appeared to be in a hurry. Most notably, she was entering a silver sedan that wasn't part of the guest parking roster. That car, Detective Keene soon discovered, had not been registered at the estate security checkpoint. Its presence was a complete anomaly. Checking with staff, no one remembered seeing Delaney leave the venue, let alone change her outfit. The cream dress wasn't found in the suite or among her belongings. The car's license plate wasn't visible in the photo, but forensic software worked to enhance the image. Meanwhile, Keene interviewed the valet who had discovered Cairo. Finn Ramley recalled seeing a silver vehicle idling near the trees during the cleanup. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. He assumed it belonged to a vendor, but now realized he'd seen it leave without headlights just before midnight. More disturbing details unfolded from the forensic analysis. The wine glasses found in the bridal suite tested positive for a strong sedative mixed into the champagne. Cairo's DNA was on one glass and the other was wiped clean. No fingerprints, no saliva. This suggested someone had drugged him deliberately and then taken care to eliminate evidence. At the same time, Delaney's background began to unravel. Public records showed she had changed her name only 2 years prior. She had no social media, no known family contacts, and minimal digital presence. A request for federal database checks revealed that Delaney Voss was previously known as Eloise Wren, a name tied to a closed case involving a missing man in another state. That man, Julian Kerr, had disappeared 2 weeks before his wedding to Eloise. His body was never recovered, and no charges were filed. Detective Keene's suspicion deepened. Could Delaney be repeating a pattern? Was Cairo her second groom to mysteriously vanish? Only this time, she made it look like she was the one who had been taken. The evidence was beginning to paint a picture of a woman who planned her weddings like heists and used them as exits. Now, the challenge was not only to locate Delaney, but to determine whether she was a victim or the mastermind behind the entire ordeal. Delaney Voss's carefully crafted identity had begun to collapse under the weight of her secrets. As Detective Lorna Keene dug deeper, the trail that had once gone cold began to reveal threads that were more than troubling. They were calculated, deliberate, and chillingly similar to past events. It became clear that Delaney was just the surface of something far more layered. Her previous life as Eloise Wren was quietly buried, but not forgotten. That name was connected to the mysterious disappearance of Julian Kerr, a tech consultant from Vermont who had been engaged to Eloise and vanished only days before their wedding. In that case, the narrative had been simple, a romantic boating accident on a foggy lake. The boat was never found. Neither was Julian. Detective Keene pulled the sealed files from that case and found disturbing overlaps. Julian's bank accounts had been emptied weeks prior to his disappearance, all by wire transfers that were never traced. Eloise, who claimed to be devastated at the time, received a significant life insurance payout and then vanished from public records a month later. It was the same pattern Cairo's case now seemed to be following, but this time something had gone wrong. Delaney hadn't disappeared cleanly. Cairo had survived, and she was the one missing, or hiding. At Lakeshore Estate, the guests had been released, but several remained under quiet observation. Two of them in particular were raising more questions than answers: Isla Griggs, the maid of honor, and Silas Marek, the groom's best man and longtime business partner. Isla had been Delaney's closest friend, someone she reportedly knew for years. Yet, when interviewed again, Isla struggled to provide details about Delaney's past, where she grew up, her family, old relationships. She became flustered, contradicted herself, and eventually admitted that she had only known Delaney for the last 2 years. She said they met at a wellness retreat and had clicked instantly. But there were no photos of them together before that. No verifiable history of their friendship. Silas Marek, on the other hand, was difficult in a different way. As Cairo's business partner, he had stepped into the spotlight while Cairo remained hospitalized. He offered updates to the press, issued statements on behalf of the family, and even started organizing a fund to support a search effort for Delaney. But Detective Keene noted his behavior was too polished, too rehearsed. He deflected questions and seemed unusually prepared for every inquiry. Keene requested surveillance from the nearby gas stations, toll booths, and stores. After referencing the photographer's time-stamped image of Delaney entering the silver sedan, they found footage from a highway gas station 40 miles outside the city. The grainy clip showed a silver vehicle pulling in after midnight. The driver appeared to be a woman with sunglasses. She didn't buy gas, but she did step out to use the ATM. The transaction showed a withdrawal from an account belonging to Delaney Voss. But when enhanced, the camera captured something more interesting. Silas Marek waiting inside the passenger seat. Now the narrative was shifting fast. Silas had claimed to be unaware of Delaney's whereabouts, but the camera proved he had left the estate that night, lied about his movements, and was with Delaney hours after she vanished. Keene obtained a warrant for his financials and discovered a series of quiet cash transfers between a private shell account and Delaney's bank over the last 3 months. The amounts were substantial and increased the closer it got to the wedding date. The pattern was forming, and it was darker than anyone expected. Delaney hadn't just faked a disappearance. She had plotted something intricate, something criminal, and she wasn't acting alone. Silas, with access to Cairo's business and trust, had become a key accomplice. Isla, with her fabricated friendship, seemed to be another piece of the puzzle. But the question remained, where were they now? Detectives traced one last lead, an abandoned cabin in the woods, 3 hours north. The vehicle seen at the estate had been caught again on a wildlife cam near that area. Keene dispatched a team to investigate. When they arrived, the cabin was empty. But inside was evidence of recent activity: burned documents in the fireplace, an empty bottle of champagne, 2 wine glasses, and the faint scent of perfume lingering in the air. Draped over a chair was a veil, Delaney's veil. She was ahead of them, but not for long. The discovery of the cabin deepened the mystery and sharpened the urgency of the investigation. Though Delaney and Silas had already vanished, by the time authorities arrived, the scene they left behind told its own haunting story. The fireplace was still warm, filled with the blackened remains of half-burnt papers. Forensics pulled charred fragments from the ashes, bits of Cairo Wendell's financial records, prenup documents, and even copies of property transfer forms. One corner of a document showed what appeared to be a fake signature in Cairo's name. It was becoming increasingly clear this wasn't just a disappearance. It was a carefully orchestrated scheme to commit financial fraud on a massive scale. Detective Lorna Keene worked with forensic accountants to piece together the stolen assets. Cairo's trust fund had been tampered with 2 weeks before the wedding. Your new account had been opened under the name Elise Marlowe, and nearly $3.2 million had been funneled into it using forged documents. The account was emptied just 2 days after the wedding night. The money had vanished into offshore holdings, and the digital fingerprints pointed back to Silas Marek, who had access to every layer of Cairo's business infrastructure. Meanwhile, Isla Griggs had gone silent. After her first few interviews, and she stopped returning calls and was suddenly unreachable. Investigators found her apartment empty, her phone switched off, and her bank account wiped clean. Surveillance footage from a regional bus depot showed her boarding a northbound coach with a single duffel bag. Her disappearance was quiet, but not unnoticed. Detective Keene launched a full-scale manhunt, adding Isla and Silas to the person of interest list. A pattern had fully emerged. Delaney, formerly Eloise, wasn't operating alone. She used Isla as a decoy friend, Silas as an inside man, and the wedding itself as a theatrical cover to distract from their financial heist. What made the plan even more audacious was its elegance. No one had expected the bride to disappear. No one had expected the groom to be left alive. But Delaney likely hadn't counted on Cairo surviving long enough to talk. As Cairo slowly regained clarity, he recalled more from the night of the wedding. He remembered feeling off after drinking the champagne in the suite, a wave of nausea followed by a blur of lights. He also remembered Delaney telling him to close his eyes, just for a second. Then there was nothing. Doctors confirmed that the sedative was likely introduced through a drug-soaked patch applied to his skin. Subtle, untraceable, and nearly perfect. Another surprise emerged when the team analyzed digital logs from Silas's work laptop. In the weeks before the wedding, encrypted messages had been exchanged between him and an alias traced back to a dark web forum for high-level financial fraud. The messages were brief, clinical, and clearly coded. But experts translated enough to uncover the plan, transfer the funds, stage the bride's disappearance, pin suspicion on her while the rest of the team escaped unnoticed. Only, something had gone wrong. Silas had grown greedy. A second trip to the cabin revealed new evidence hidden beneath a loose floorboard. A hidden safe containing passports, burner phones, and a small stack of unregistered diamonds. But more shocking was a journal. Handwritten notes inside, believed to be Delaney's, detailed everything: how she met Silas at a charity gala, how she tested Isla's loyalty by feeding her false secrets, how she manipulated Cairo's love into access, and most chillingly, how she began planning her exit strategy months before anyone said, "I do." The journal ended with a series of addresses in Central America and a note scribbled on the back page. "Silas is a risk. I'll handle it." It didn't take long before one final lead changed everything. A body had been discovered in a marshy area 20 miles from the cabin. It was male, hands bound, a single bullet wound to the neck. Dental records confirmed the identity, Silas Merrick. His face was bruised, his fingers broken, and beside him, buried in the mud, was the gun registered under the name Eloise Wren. Delaney had removed the weak link from her plan. Now she was alone, and free. The murder of Silas Merrick marked a dramatic shift in the investigation. Up until then, Detective Lorna Keene had operated under the assumption that Delaney Voss, or rather, Eloise Wren, was running a sophisticated con game with a reliable team. But now it was clear she didn't intend to share her escape. Silas had helped her manipulate, forge, and transfer millions. When he became expendable or perhaps untrustworthy, she discarded him with ruthless precision. The bullet in his neck, the broken fingers, the shallow grave, they weren't the marks of panic. They were the hallmarks of control. With Silas gone and Isla Griggs still missing, the search widened. International alerts were issued. Border authorities across Mexico and Central America were contacted. Detective Keene began combing through Delaney's past using her old name. The real picture of Eloise Wren emerged through old college records, employment files, and psychiatric assessments buried in sealed court documents. Her childhood had been unstable, marked by foster homes, brief adoptions, and a juvenile record full of manipulation and deceit. She had never stayed anywhere longer than necessary and never left without taking something. Money, information, trust. The journal found at the cabin became a roadmap for what came next. It contained references to several towns in Belize, Panama, and Costa Rica. Though vague, Keene followed the trail, requesting surveillance footage, airport records, and even monitoring luxury yacht registries. A break came when an American tourist in Costa Rica reported a strange encounter with a woman who looked like Delaney at a beachside hotel. She was going by the name Lorna Keene and claimed to be a travel writer from New York. She vanished the next morning, leaving only a single hairbrush behind. DNA matched Delaney. It was enough to confirm she was alive and constantly moving. Each sighting was followed by silence. She never stayed anywhere longer than a few days. She used cash, forged passports, and false names. But she made one mistake. An offshore account opened under the name Elise Marlowe was accessed through a private banking terminal in Panama City. The transaction was small, just to 150, but enough to trigger a digital alert connected to the ongoing financial fraud investigation. Cameras showed her wearing a short wig and sunglasses, accompanied by a woman who resembled Isla Griggs. Both walked into the bank. Only one walked out. Detective Keene reviewed the footage closely. The woman believed to be Isla had hesitated at the door. She looked uneasy, glancing back at Delaney several times. It was the last time she was seen alive. 2 weeks later, her body was discovered floating off the coast of a private island, her wrist tattoo matched to Isla Griggs. Like Silas, she had become a liability. The pattern was undeniable now. Delaney didn't just use people. She eliminated them. She left behind no trail except for corpses and confusion. Each step she took was calculated, and every identity she assumed was built for transience. As her circle closed, she shed her helpers like a snake shedding skin. Alone, she became even harder to track. Cairo Wendell, recovering slowly from the trauma, kept himself out of the media spotlight. His father's legal team had frozen all remaining assets tied to Delaney's name. But the damage was done. Over $3 million had disappeared into ghost accounts. His public image had been shattered. He no longer gave interviews. He withdrew from his businesses, moved out of the city, and avoided all questions about the woman he had nearly married. The media turned Delaney into a myth. She was called the Vanishing Bride, the Wedding Widow, and America's Most Charming Fugitive. True crime forums speculated about her next target. Documentaries replayed her story, each one more dramatic than the last. But Delaney, wherever she was, remained quiet. A grainy photo taken by a tourist in Morocco a year later showed a woman resembling her boarding a train. Another image surfaced in Romania. Blonde hair this time. A different build, but the same sharp eyes. Nothing ever confirmed. Just whispers. Detective Keene eventually retired without closing the case. But every so often, she'd receive a package in the mail. No return address, just a single photo. Always a different country. Always a woman with a familiar face in the background. The bride who vanished never truly disappeared. She simply rewrote her story again and again.